Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to
Let's Talk About Book,
where we talk about
Book.
I'm Smeevca.
And I'm Strawberry.
And we're starting Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin. But you already know that.
By who? What?
By who? What? Game of Thrones? Never even heard of it. Not anymore, I haven't. I believe that some season of television came out and then everyone immediately
forgot about
Game of Thrones.
Until House of Dragons and people jumped on just that and not... So there's,
It's so funny because people do watch House of the Dragons and stuff, and it's just like
it's quite beloved. I
do feel like people have been enjoying it, but I have not watched it at all. Actually, I think it's based off of one of the side books.
Yeah, it's honestly a big reason why I recognize some of the characters in the beginning of this book, just the names.
Oh, from Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Gotcha, because we were just talking about House of the Dragons.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, you've watched House of the Dragons?
No, but just hearing
people talk about it online
you just can't,
and stuff. Yeah.
Exist in kind of nerd Twitter and stuff or whatever.
Yeah, because I have read all of the books. Well, all of A Song of Ice and Fire. That is out so far because I've been watching Alt Shift X. He's my go-to Game of Thrones theory and lore guy.
Gotcha.
I'm sure that you all have your own. I know some other names out there and stuff, but he's my
always love a good lore guy for
he's British. So he just sounds nice. But I feel like is very sane and level-headed. And is here's everything that we know for sure, and some things we can say confidently, and some that are more speculative. And he also thinks about theme and story and stuff. Yeah. So it's not just here's two things, I've connected them. Right,
because Song of Ice and Fire fandom and stuff has been in hiatus brain probably for a long time, right?
Yes, it's the whole fandom has been hiatus brain for a long time at this point.
I was in the infamous hiatus braand Sherlock between season 2 and season 3.
Right. But,
which is way shorter and,
and it
and a different insane.
A different kind of insane. Yeah, so listening to Alt Shift X again, I'm oh yeah, there's all these other novellas that he came out with and other lore books. There's a book that is here's a bunch of Targaryen history stuff. And I think my ex read that.
Yeah.
And there's all these novellas that are the Dunk and Egg stories.
Got you.
Yeah, Sir Duncan the Tall and his buddy Egg, who's Egg short for Aegon.
Got you. Okay.
He's just palling around with one of these Targaryen princes in the past and going on little adventures. And he's written a series of these novellas that people mine for lore and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's all canon. I have World of Ice and Fire, and I was showing them some of the illustrations and stuff, which are
gorgeous
very good. Oh yeah, very good stuff. So I've been getting back into A Song of Ice and Fire brain. And because it's the books, it is A Song of Ice and Fire. But that's also more of a mouthful than just saying Game of Thrones. Which is why the show is called that. But we are specifically talking about Game of Thrones, the book.
The book, yeah.
And here's the thing. When we were doing Sanderson, chapters are numbered.
Yep.
Like a normal person would do. But no, these... I'm going to be using the system that I've seen in Alt Shift X's videos.
Yeah.
I think this is probably other people maybe also do this, but anyway, we're reading from Prologue through Catelyn II.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's each of the chapters is just named for its perspective character.
Yeah.
And he does start switching it up a little bit where he'll do some fancy things, instead of just being Arya.
Yeah.
This isn't one for Arya, but it's just it'll be a little title,
Okay, got you.
One that I do know for sure, it's like the Reaver, and then that guy's name is Victarion, and so then later it's Victarion, but they're like, just, I guess, to differentiate it or something. Yeah. I feel like he starts doing that some later, and it might be for the sake of it not just being the same name over and over again, but anyway. Yeah. So Prologue, through the second Catelyn POV chapter, we meet some characters and stuff, and so... Mm-hmm. I have kind of read this book before years ago. Yeah. In high school, I don't remember how much of it I read. I think about like maybe 3/4 of it, maybe the whole thing, maybe half of it. I've also seen a bit of the TV show, and have existed online with it being a huge popular like thing. So like there's definitely. Which is funny because, like, I've tried to ask you some slightly leading questions. And I haven't. And you haven't said the things that I would expect you to say if you knew some things. And some things that I, like, would expect you to kind of know just from cultural osmosis. Interesting. But also it's like, it's hard for me to know because I'm in it. Right. So it's like what is popular? What is like, popular? Like, I do, like, so... Spoilers for the rest of the series. Maybe I'm just gonna name off some stuff that I do like know in the future. I do know the Red Wedding, unfortunately, and Purple Wedding, or what I know people call it, or whatever. Yeah. I've seen some, like, bits, the like TV show and stuff like that. And you know, like, who's sort of like involved in those things, right? Yeah. And so there's some bits that I do know, and as I was reading this, there was some bits that I definitely remembered. Like, as soon as I started to read it, I was remembering from when I read it years ago. But yeah. Yeah. Yep. So, and as you've been going through, there've been things that you're like, oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. That's familiar. Yeah. Do you remember like how far into the show you watched? I know for certain I've seen the entire first season. Yeah. I've seen part of the second season at least. Not certain how much. Yeah. And if I've seen into like the third season. And then there's just bits from like, big events that happened in the show that like I would see GIFs or pictures or whatever from. Just general discussion and whatnot. Yeah. Yeah. Character names I've heard of, and like going through this beginning bit, I'm like, I really felt like I needed to take notes. I was listening to this at work, so quick thing about the audiobook. Yeah. No offense. Yeah. It's a really bad audiobook. I remember the narrator's not great. I remember trying to listen to, like, the third book's audiobook, like, years ago. Like, I think I probably was in, like, high school or college or something when I was doing that. It must have been college, because I don't think I started reading this until, like, senior year of high school, I think. So I think it was, like, listening to the third audiobook, and I couldn't get into it. Yeah. But now I, like, love listening to audiobooks in general. But it was, like, so there's a character who... Does this name ring a bell? Brienne. Yeah. I know. I Bran of Tarth. Yes, I can see. It's what's her name? Tall lady. Yeah, tall lady. She was also in Star Wars. Star Wars. Yeah. She was the shiny stormtrooper lady who that didn't do anything. Didn't do anything. She was so cool and there, and then doesn't do anything. I just remember in the book. Or in the audiobook, I think, for book 3, the guy just saying Brian. And I was like, I can't. Yeah. I just can't. So this audiobook narrator, I think he did a good Robert Baratheon? Is that who it is? That is a character, yes, Robert Baratheon. Wait, which... Now I'm like second guessing myself. The king? Yeah. Okay. I just got like Robert Baratheon. He's the king. That's the problem. Is all these character names are around my head, and just like I know so many exist, so that I'm just like, is this a name that like I've just heard in the past, or is it someone that's connected to the events that I'm currently? Yeah, sort of keeping your knowledge straight. Yeah. You need to start taking notes or whatever. Yeah, because I'm listening to it at work, which is made it kind of difficult. But this narrator,
his Robert Baratheon is probably his best.
Yeah.
He does actually a great voice for him. Mm-hmm. The rest of it...
A little rough.
He just doesn't have a lot of range in voices. He can do a few quite well, and then kind of typical, just like narration, just like plain narration.
Yeah.
And I just think it might be just when it was recorded, like just audiobooks had become more of a almost voice acting type thing.
Yeah. We need Michael Kramer and Kate Redding to come in.
Right. Or I love Travis Baldree. Mm-hmm. One of the best audiobook narrators I've ever listened to. Amazing job. Amazing.
I have now listened to our first little part of Cradle that we're going to be doing.
Yeah, we will be talking about that at some point.
Yep, so we'll be doing Cradle coming up.
And so we'll talk about Travis Baldree again, definitely, because he's become one of my favorite narrators. I've read books purely, like I've listened to audiobooks purely because I saw he was voicing it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah, and you know, not to spoil, but I did enjoy what I listened to.
Yeah.
So look forward to that. But yeah, so what do you remember?
Yeah, so I wanted to do a little bit of like impressions and like what I kind of remember when I first read it. I want to do like kind of my impressions of the characters that we did in this section, like the perspective characters. I think we'll just do.
Just sort of like I'll just list them off.
Yeah.
Do we want to start with like the prologue or just jump right into like the perspective characters? Like, do you want to talk about like any impressions from the prologue? Or
yeah, we can talk about that. The prologue was something that I like remembered, if not like all of the details, the like feeling of it very well, and remembered like really liking it when I like first read it and stuff, like drawing me in and all creepy and stuff.
I feel like the prologues for these books tend to be good. There's sort of like a tradition that the prologues, you start with someone dying.
Yeah.
It sets the tone.
Yeah.
But yes, our first perspective character is Bran.
That's probably the one that I have the kind of least
impression
on.
Yeah, because when we're like with him in the beginning, it's very just sort of like it's the first chapter, so we're just kind of getting a lot of things introduced through Bran, and we're not getting a ton of like who he is.
Yeah. It's kind of just comes across as, just like little.
He's just a kid. Just watching the stuff happen.
You honestly get more of an impression of his father than...
Yeah, it's more about sort of like Ned than about him in that chapter.
Yeah, I forgot Ned's name for a second. I was just sitting here like, where did it go?
Yep. Yeah, I feel like honestly you get a bit more of an impression of Bran in the other chapters of like seeing him, but yeah. So, and then after Bran, we have Catelyn.
So I remember... Before I reread this, I had a very bad memory of Catelyn.
Yeah.
Of, like, really...
not liking her?
Really not liking her.
Yeah, that's fair.
my opinions have changed a bit on this, like, read. And, like, just, like, remembering it better and just having the...
Right, just sort of like our introduction to her here.
Yeah. But I remember... not being a huge fan in general.
Yeah, no, that's very fair, because like, and this will very much be a thing like as it goes on, with Game of Thrones, all these characters, no one like to say no one's ever wholly good is correct, I would say.
Yeah.
To say no one's ever wholly evil, there's maybe some.
Yeah.
There's maybe some who are just wholly evil, but you can understand them at least. It's it's all about complexity. There's a thing, All Shift X likes to quote this a lot, and it's George R. R. Martin quoting William Faulkner, I believe, which is that the only thing worth writing about is the human heart in conflict with itself.
Got you.
And, And so it's a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's very much about the internal, like the internality of the characters.
Yeah.
And the sort of like, it's very character focused.
Yeah.
Which is why book 4 is great. Anyway.
I love it.
People are like, the other books are the big war books, and people say book 4 is boring, but no, book 4 is great, actually. Y'all are just, anyway. So yeah, Catelyn.
Yeah.
Negative coming in your memory, but then, like, reading a little bit, you're kind of a little bit more...
Yeah. I understand her.
Yeah. And then, Daenerys.
Yeah. I feel like I remembered this, like, some of the best.
Yeah.
Like, in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think because she's so young and it's just very intense right off the bat.
It is.
With Dany, and
it is.
Stuck in my mind. I remember, like, stuff with her brother and, like, kind of what happens with him, I think.
Yeah. What happens with him, you think?
I'm pretty sure he gets gold for it on his head.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was like a whole scene in the show.
Yeah, I definitely... Yeah, I remember it in... I'm pretty sure I read the book before I saw that scene in the show. So I definitely do...
Yeah, because you're just like, oh, I know what's about to happen.
Yup.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
because it is also interesting because there's, like, the differences between the book and the show.
Yeah.
Both in terms of, like, how the characters are portrayed, but also scenes that, like, are in the show that aren't in the books. Yeah. And, like, the first couple seasons are, like, pretty accurate.
Yeah.
They're, like, pretty... close to the books, but then
it's kind of
but even in the first couple seasons there are, like, things that are different where you're like, but the people generally like them. These two characters never had a conversation, but we get to see them have a conversation, and that's great. And then later it's like, oh no.
Did that work? Or
did that work?
Yeah, it's always like little changes can do a lot more than you think or whatever.
Yeah.
I should make a obligatory One Piece reference, because there's just with the live action and stuff, like some of
the changes being made. They're going to go bring the dogs in. You can always be guaranteed that when we're trying to record, the dogs are going to want to come in and out. Yep. And after Dany is Eddard, Ned Stark.
I don't remember this perspective that well.
Yeah, you don't remember Ned's perspective chapter that well?
I, do have an impression of him and stuff more from the Bran chapter, I think.
Yeah. Because
and then from the Catelyn chapter later.
Right.
But... Oh, because it's with... Does he, like, meet with...
Yeah, I think this is... Yeah, it's him and Robert.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the perspective chapters, you're almost...
Because we're sort of, like, meeting another character, we're getting an impression of that character.
Yeah, so I feel like you're kind of getting an impression in this chapter of the king.
Yeah, you're getting an impression of Robert, while in the Bran chapter, you're getting an impression of Ned, but now that you're in Ned's perspective, you're getting an impression of Robert. Yeah. That's also... Because it's, like, going back and, like, highlighting for this, it's, like, it's very dense.
It is. It really is.
And like, I think that's always kind of true, but I have seen people talk about, like, the first book and how it's, like, kind of different from the others, because, like, then things just keep growing and expanding and going off in different directions, and so it's, like, the first book is, like, tight in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
But then it's, like, we're growing and we're spending a lot of time with characters, and sometimes I feel like we get a bit more sort of, like right now it's like we are being introduced to people. Here's a new person, here's a new idea, we're throwing concepts out there, like, a lot of information up front, and then, like, as things go on, it's like doing stuff with the pieces we have, but also continuing to just add more and more pieces because George can't help himself. You gotta keep... What if more characters? What if even more characters? And they're perspective characters, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so your sort of impression of Ned?
I feel like I don't have a ton of impression of him as a character and more as a figure.
Yeah.
I feel like.
That makes sense. Yeah. And then after Ned is Jon.
He's like 14.
Yeah.
Which I forgot because I'm so used to, like, Kit.
Kit Harington.
You know, like, so it's just like
you will forget all of their ages. Like, it's this is silly.
Yeah.
It's reading Cradle is very much like reading an anime in a lot of ways. Reading this is like reading an anime in which you go, they're not that old. No, they're older than that. I know that you said that this is like a 14-year-old. No, it's not.
It's it gives me like Hunter x Hunter, like following Gon and Killua, like
it's like these
Killua
small
being
children
like tortured, like
yeah, it's like these small children should not be doing these things, and there's like a certain level of awareness and understanding of that that I feel like over time goes away.
Got you.
Like, partly because George had initially planned for there to be a time skip.
Got you.
And people be older, and then that didn't happen because, again, he can't help himself, and he just kept writing in the present tense.
Yeah.
And so now...
It's just like, well, what if I just fill this in? What if I just fill this in? And then it just becomes, you know.
And so then it's just like, no, they're still very much children. Yeah. Years do pass over the course of these books, you know. But, like, they do get older, but they're still too young. They're still too young for all the stuff that they're doing. And then that's the last of the perspective chapters, because then it's Catelyn again. Any other, like... character impressions, like people who particularly stuck out other than like the perspective characters?
There was someone mentioned that I feel like I just have like a super vague intention, but I don't remember the name.
Yeah.
Was it like a ward of theirs or something?
Yeah, Theon.
Yeah.
Theon Greyjoy.
I recognized that name as someone important, or I just have vibes of
this person will be relevant later.
Yeah.
Or is relevant in general.
Yeah.
Just like I heard that name around.
Yeah. I have just such spotty, like, I have such good memory of some bits and just complete memory of others, so I'm excited to...
I will say, Theon is, like, someone who, when I was first reading, just sort of, like, as an example of, like, there's so many characters, there's so many names. Yeah. Like, every incidental person, it's like One Piece. Every incidental person we come across has a name.
Yeah.
And whether or not they're going to be important later or not, they have a name when you hear it. And so it's like, Theon, at a certain point, I just, like, saw Theon's name, and I'm like, who is this? Yeah. Like, he's been here the whole time, but then it's like I'm you know, a few chapters in, and they mention Theon, and I'm like, and who's that again?
So the thing is, I didn't remember that he was in the beginning, and in any, like, I just remembered the name and everything, and then I don't think I really paid attention to it my first read through. Like, I think I just completely deleted his name because I was just like, in the same way, there's just so many characters that it's just, you know.
Yeah, because it's like, because there's also...
But this time I was like, oh wait, that's a name. That's an important name.
Oh yeah, because, like I'm trying to bring someone's name to mind right now. I'm like, there's a guy who I'm thinking of, but what's his name? He's just like the quartermaster or something.
Oh yeah,
and he just like gets mentioned offhand in these like early chapters because he's like with them in the very beginning. Is he the one like
talking with Catelyn and stuff, like with them in
that later Catelyn chapter?
Yeah.
No, although he is another guy who's like, oh yeah, this guy, he's around.
What is he?
He's one of the maesters.
Okay, I was gonna say maester, and then I'm like, wait, is that right?
You are correct. You gotta have a little bit more confidence to just say, you know. Because goddamn, Rickon is like an infant. Yeah, he's like 3.
Three.
Which isn't an infant. He's a toddler.
Yeah, toddler.
He's like a toddler, and he's literally like 3 years old.
Yeah, but it's still like carry around practically everywhere age. You know, like
exactly. You know. Oh, yes, Maester Lewin.
Yeah.
It's just like, random names that get thrown about. Anyone else who, like, made any sort of, like, impressions on you early on?
Tyrion came up in this bit.
Yeah, Tyrion came up. We haven't had his perspective yet, but he's come up.
No, but he did come up, and that was also, I remembered that conversation with Jon.
Yeah, like, yeah. It's a good one.
Quite well. Like, I remembered it almost, like, beat for beat, like, from when I had first read it in high school. Yeah. Just stuck in my head.
Tyrion's, like, introduction is so funny.
Yeah, he like... He can just do, like, a flip.
Yeah, he does, like, a flip. He's, like, up on some shit, and then he does a little, like, flip and, like, lands in front of Jon. And he's a little acrobat. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I was also... I like... My brain just died. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just funny whenever Tyrion just, like, shows up because he does a little flip, and it's just not something that, like, people talk about.
Yeah.
Because it's, like, the popular, pop culture, Tyrion, very beloved. Tyrion's around all the time. And what is it that you know about Tyrion? He drinks, and he's smart.
Yeah.
And that's the things you know. But also, he do little flips.
Yeah.
You're like, all right. Yeah, I don't think Peter Dinklage can do a flip, so, we kind of just, just cut that part out. It's not super important. Yeah.
Get a stuntman.
Mm-hmm. Yep, get a little stuntman to do it.
Yeah.
Just cut back to Peter Dinklage. But yeah, do you have any more impressions, or do you want to go into the chapter by chapter?
I think we can go into the chapters.
Alrighty. So starting with the prologue. And boy howdy, what a prologue.
Yeah.
Because we start with some, like, random Night's Watch people.
Yeah.
Out in the woods, roving around. They're looking for, like, wildlings and stuff. It's like, we should start back. The wildlings are dead. And so they're, like, out looking for these wildlings, but it seems like they may be dead. There's this guy, Sir Waymar Royce, who's, like...
Yeah, like the noble kid, or whatever.
Yep, he's, like, a noble kid. He's, like, a knight. Sir Waymar Royce. But we're in the head of just, like, some random Night's Watch. Yeah. Like, ranger or whatever. Will.
Yeah. It's very, like, vibes and stuff, this,
this early bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's, like, we have, like, Will had felt as though something were watching him, something cold and implacable that loved him not. Yeah. And wanted nothing so much as to ride hellbent for the safety of the wall, but that was not a feeling to share with your commander. Yeah. It's just, like, getting this sense of the world, like, it's like the Night's Watch and the wall, and, like, oh, we're going out into, like, the frozen north, and something spooky's going on, and like, he's, like, scared, but he doesn't want to, like, say anything to his commander, and like, there's a lot of sort of, like, posturing going on with this, like, young lord, right? And
because doesn't want to offend him or, like,
right, and there's a lot of, like, Sir Waymar Royce was the youngest son of an ancient house with too many heirs. He was a handsome youth of 18, grey-eyed and graceful and slender as a knife. And we get his description of his black moleskin gloves and his sable coat or whatever. And they're, like, making fun of, like, the other guys, like, the regular Night's Watch people are, like, making fun of him for it. Yeah. Like, behind his back. His cloak was his crowning glory, sable, thick and black and soft as sin, but he killed them all himself, he did. Garrett told the barracks over wine, twisted their little heads off, our mighty warrior. They had all shared the laugh. It was hard to take orders from a man you laughed at in your cups. Yeah. So we already sort of are getting, like, themes of, like, he's a noble, and these guys aren't, and they don't take him seriously, and he takes himself very seriously. Yeah. He's very, like, fancy and put together, while they're, like,
And then he can waltz in and get them all killed.
Yep. Yeah.
Like.
Yep, because. It's because there's a lot. you know, a lot of what I feel these books end up being about.
And also, like, it's his fault that the guy was executed too by Ned and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the guy. It's the same guy that's in the prologue, I think, because he's missing the ears.
Oh, I mean, the guy, like, I mean, the not the knight, of course.
Yeah. But because he, like, was so, like, he refused to, like, just, like, go back or whatever. He was so, like, intent on, like, being seen as this, like, figure, of like, oh, like we can do this or whatever, right. And just like drag them along, like forced them,
and so then that ends up getting the other
guy to like desert, which got him
killed later. Yeah. Gotcha. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, we get this like young swaggering noble who is just like in over his head. He ends up, you know, as it goes on, because there's a lot of sort of like creeping, building up the
like
sort of
tension,
the tension and the feeling, and I really like some of you know, it's just like there's these wildlings and they're dead, and it seems like they've died from like the cold, but it's still
not cold enough to actually do that,
and then when they come back later they're just like gone, and it's like what happened, oh yes, they say you don't feel any pain towards the end. First you go weak and drowsy and everything starts to fade. Then it's like sinking into a sea of warm milk, peaceful like. Such eloquence, Garrett said Waymore, Sir Waymore observed. I never suspected you had it in you. which I feel like is another sort of a little bit of just like the complexity that George likes to bring to the character. Like even these like random little people here at the beginning, they're all like complete characters, even if they are sort of in some ways like archetypes. Where it's like this noble knight who's like, I'm gonna go, it's like, I'm brave and we're gonna charge off. So what if everything's creepy and these people died of you know, died in the cold and now they're gone. I don't think anything crazy is really going on. It couldn't have froze. Not if the wall was weeping. It wasn't cold enough. So everything's fine, obviously.
So the wall was weeping?
Yeah, as in like,
because I was hearing that or whatever, and I didn't really know what that meant.
I think it's just like, well, because the wall, I mean, I guess they haven't really described what the wall is like, but you know what the wall is like, because it's made of ice.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really... I don't think I connected it. Yeah,
it's like the wall's made of ice. Yeah. And so it's like, if the wall is weeping, if like, you know, if it's warm enough that the ice is melting,
then... Got you. I didn't... Okay.
Yeah, and also, or even just like, it's essentially like, it's not freezing. Yeah. Because even if it wasn't made of ice, it could be like condensation. Yeah, even if the wall's like melting, it's like there's condensation. So it's like it's cold and there's like but it's not like frost or whatever. But yeah, that's what that meant, I believe. Your dead men seem to have moved camp.
Yeah,
a huge double-bladed battle axe, still lying where he had seen it last, untouched, a valuable weapon. So it's like, they wouldn't have
just like left it. Yeah.
And again, it's just like...
And, like, it like, obviously, if it was in the same spot, it's like, he didn't make it up. It's still...
Yeah, it's still there.
So, like, he wasn't just, like, seeing things or something.
Right. And a lot of this, like, a lot of this is just really good, like, building tension, building dread. Just like, little things that just, like, get dropped. He whispered a prayer to the nameless gods of the wood. Just, like, little lore things like that. Down below, the lordling called out suddenly, "Who goes there?" Will heard uncertainty in the challenge. He stopped climbing, he listened, he watched. The others made no sound, and that's capital O. Yeah. Will saw movement from the corner of his eye, pale shapes gliding through the wood. He turned his head, glimpsed a white shadow in the darkness. "Answer me, why is it so cold?" It was cold, shivering. Yeah. So it's just like...
They just, like, bring the cold with them.
They bring the cold with them, and they're these, like... white shadows. Yeah. A shadow emerged from the dark of the woods. It stood in front of Royce. Tall it was, and gaunt, and hard as old bones, with flesh pale as milk. Its armor seemed to change color as it moved. Here it was white as new-fallen snow, there black as shadow, everywhere dappled with the deep gray-green of the trees. The patterns ran like moonlight on water with every step it took, which kind of makes me think of the, like...
the water cloaks?
Yes, the water cloaks.
Yeah.
I was like, I hadn't read Wheel of Time by that point. Like, it's a water cloak. They were like, and so then, come no further, the lordling warned. His voice cracked like a boy's. Yeah. Slid forward on silent feet. Its hand was on a long sword, like none he had ever seen. No human metal had gone into the forging of that blade. It was alive with moonlight, translucent, a shard of crystal so thin it seemed almost to vanish when seen edge on. There was a faint blue shimmer to the thing, a ghost light that played around its edge, and somehow Will knew it was sharper than any razor. And then they fight.
Yep.
And it does not go well for our Lord here. Will thought he was a boy no longer, but a man of the Night's Watch. Because it's like, he's like, I'm going to be brave, I'm going to fight. And it's like, in a different story, that, like, bravery would be rewarded.
Right.
But it's like, this is more about him being foolish.
Yep.
And going after something that he has really no business dealing with. It's like, no, in this situation, you really should run.
Yeah. Honestly, you should report.
Yeah.
Like, you're scouts. Mm-hmm. You're not...
Yeah.
Like,
you do not need to fight this thing. What you need to do is run and tell people about it.
Because the information is more important than...
Yep, because later, the one guy who deserted is going to tell his story to Ned, and Ned's not going to believe him. Nope. He's like, he went mad with fright, essentially. Something out there made him go mad with fright. Yep. And it's like, if him and Sir Waymar and the other guy were, like, all together, like, no, we saw this, and we, you know.
And even if they like, left early or didn't see anything, they could come with more people.
Yeah.
Just having information and knowing that things are odd is, a big...
is important.
Yeah.
Yep. The other halted. Will saw its eyes. Blue, deeper and bluer than any human eyes. A blue that burned like ice. And then more of them show up. 3 of them. 4, 5. It was completely surrounded, essentially. And then when their blades meet, there was no ring of metal on metal, only a high, thin sound at the edge of hearing, like an animal screaming in pain. So it's like they got crazy, weird ice swords.
Yeah.
And all of the others are just, like, standing there, completely blank, watching him fight, and just the other is just, it's so easy.
Yeah.
Just unfazed while this guy's going all out. He's just...
Have you ever heard an icicle across metal? Like, rubbing on metal?
I don't think so.
I can hear, like, I know that sound, and that's what I heard.
Gotcha.
Like, in this scene.
I'm not... Interesting. I was like, it's just neat, whatever, but it's, like, interesting.
It was very, like, I could hear it.
Yeah. Yep, it's just, like, this pure ice sword.
And, like, the way, I almost said Robert Jordan, goddamn.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
George R. Martin.
Writes... Especially because, like, we've been in the north and stuff, like, about the cold and stuff. I love that, because I am not good in the cold, and I get cold very easily, and winter is rough and very cold, and it hurts. It's sharp. Yeah. The wind is sharp.
Yep.
So some of the descriptions are just very
very, very on point for you. Yep. The other said something in a language that Will did not know. His voice was like the cracking of ice on a winter lake, and the words were mocking. So it's like, one, we see that, like, these creatures have, like, language.
Yeah.
You know, like, obviously it's like they have armor and swords, and they're, like, coordinated in this way, but they also, like, speak. They have a language. It's like we're immediately, like,
they have some sort of culture and like industry maybe of some sort, you know, like
right, because it's
for
like
armor and such, you know.
And they also like let this guy have like a one-on-one.
Yeah.
For like no reason.
There was a ton. There was like what, like 5 of them or something.
Yeah, there was like 5 of them, I think they said, and it's like. Truly, it was just because, like, yeah, this guy's got it, and it's just like fun to watch, I guess, in a sense. For Robert.
Yeah.
The other's parry was almost lazy. When the blades touched, the steel shattered. So it's like fully. Again, it's a little anime.
yeah.
Everything's a little anime on the sliding scale of anime. You know, we all exist on that scale.
The sliding scale of anime.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then he gets killed. You know, the sword shatters, and then all the rest of them just like come in and start cutting them up. It was cold butchery. The pale blade sliced through ring mail as if it were silk. He heard their voices and laughter sharp as icicles. So it's like they laugh, they speak, and they do terrible things to humans. But also, we saw this thing that we didn't understand, and immediately we're like, Who goes there?
Yep, he died and then undied.
He died and then he undied. Because that's the thing. Lying dead like that, you saw how young he was, a boy. Yeah. And the thing is that they're saying this about this guy who's 18 years old, and then we're going to be following these, like, 14-year-olds.
Yep.
As they go through...
And Bran's, like, 8.
Yeah, Bran's, like, real young. He's, like, so young. They're all too young. And you know, again, it's part of it, and then at a certain point I feel like it stops being part of it, almost. For some of them more than others. He found what was left of the sword a few feet away. The end splintered and twisted like a tree struck by lightning. The broken sword would be his proof. Garrett would know what to make of it, and if not him, then surely that old Bear Mormont or Maester Aemon. So more names just constantly getting dropped.
I remember those names from reading this before. I'm pretty sure. I like Night Watch, I think, people and stuff.
Yeah, Mormont and Maester Aemon.
Yeah.
Yep. Will rose. Sir Waymore Royce stood over him. He had been brought back.
Yep.
Yes, the right eye was open. The pupil burned blue. It saw. Yep. And then he gets killed. So it's like the only person left. You know, because it's like, oh, this sword, we can use it as proof. Like, the other guy's like, I can report back with proof. But there's just nothing.
Yep.
Because he got fucking zombified.
Yep.
And that's the prologue. Yeah, it's quite the opening. I feel like it really does a lot of, like, setting the tone.
Yeah, definitely.
And establishing up front, here's what... like is our like big bad essentially. You know. But again, it's still like they're presented as people, but as others. They're just sort of like another type of life that's out here and hostile to us. And then it ends.
Yep.
All right. You ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
All right. Bran. So we're here with Bran, watching
the execution.
Watching the execution.
Yeah.
Yep. He set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode amongst them. And he's young. It was the 9th year of summer and the 7th of Bran's life. Yeah. Which again, just like a little detail, the whole 9 years of summer.
Yeah.
The weird broken seasons of Game of Thrones getting introduced. And Bran's only 7, and he's considered old enough to come watch this execution.
Yep.
And
as like a duty.
Yes. Yep. And there's like a lot of like sort of like ado made about it.
Yeah.
We get mentions of Robb, of Mance Rayder, the King Beyond the Wall, old Nan telling stories about wildlings and how they're slavers and slayers and thieves, cruel men. They consorted with giants and ghouls, stole girl children in the dead of night, and drank blood from polished horns. And their women lay with the others in the long night to sire terrible half-human children. Yeah, and there's a whole... But with Bran, there's a whole thing about him being, like, old enough to come see this, right. And, like, you gotta look, and you gotta watch, and you gotta, like, you know, be kind of grown up. And whenever it does, everyone's like, you know, you did good
job, and everything.
Like, you did good, we're proud of you, and... Later, Ned's like, you would have been, like, talking to Catelyn, it's like, oh, you would have been proud of Bran whenever we went and did this. It's such a thing. We get Robb and Jon, they're older, they're both, like, 14.
Oh, it must be dogs over and stuff. So they're
gotcha.
Like, getting to know each other.
Yeah, there's a dog squealing.
Yeah, it was barking
outside.
And stuff next door.
Don't know if y'all will be able to hear that or not. But yeah, he's there with Robb and Jon, and Theon's also there, and Theon's being a dick. And, And Jon and Robb are being less of a dick.
Yeah.
And Ned has his whole thing about, like, he has to come out and do it, and it's like, do you know why I have to? It's like, and it's like, you know, the king has a headsman, and the other people, and it's like, you know, we believe...
We do it different in the north and everything.
Yep. And let me try and find... Jory Castle, that was the name I was looking for, the captain of his household guard. I've been looking for that name earlier. The question was not why the man had to die, but why must I do it? Our way is the older way. The blood of the first men still flows in the veins of the Starks, and we hold to the belief that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you would take a man's life, you owe it to him to look in his eyes and hear his final words, and if you cannot bear to do that, then perhaps the man does not deserve to die. And the he who passes the sentence should swing the sword is definitely one that gets like quoted and brought up and stuff.
I definitely remembered like this like kind of quote and stuff as it came up.
Yep. And it's like, one day, Bran, you will be Robb's bannerman, holding a keep of your own for your brother and your king, and justice will fall to you. You must take no pleasure in the task, but neither must you look away. A ruler who hides behind a paid executioner soon forgets what death is. So it's like, the Starks have... Especially, like, Ned really holds on to this. A very particular kind of, like, it's
kind of code.
Yeah, a particular kind of code where it's like, it's a harsh world out there.
Yeah.
And you can't delight in cruelty, but you can't look away from the sort of the hardships in the world. And it's like, sometimes you gotta do hard things.
Yeah.
Sometimes world's hard, gotta be hard.
Right.
But you can't let it make you, like, cruel.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's like, I feel like, you know, people talk a lot about Game of Thrones. It's like, you know, or at least, you know, like grimdark. Yeah. But like, I feel like nowadays grimdark,
it has a certain like connotation or whatever, like just, you know, like edgy to be edgy. But that's not really what like a grimdark as a genre is. It's just kind of like more of a tone. Like it's
right, and it's one of those things where like even now I feel like the tone that people expect from grimdark has gotten maybe even darker in some ways than like Game of Thrones is, but also like, I don't know, at least in terms of like this idea of like consistently everything's just shitty all the time. Yeah. When Game of Thrones, things definitely aren't like that.
Yeah. Like, it's just that like the overall like my brain just died.
Yeah, your brain died. The overall tone or whatever. Yeah, it's just like it's not like it's definitely not going for the same sort of like optimistic fantasy that a lot of stuff is going for. It's trying very much to be like, no, a lot of really bad things happen in the world, and we don't want to like shy away from it in the story. But also, you know, there's good times and there's bad times. But we're really sort of paying attention to a lot of the bad times and sort of like what that brings out of people. And so it's like, you know, in the face of this harsh world, how do you deal with it? Right. And for the Starks, it's like, you gotta be hard in the face of it, but you can't let it like make you like, the world is harsh, and sometimes you have to be harsh, but not cruel per se. And yeah, it's like, because on the one hand, it's like, yeah, having your 7-year-old come watch you execute a man, that's pretty rough. Maybe they don't need to see it that young, but it's like, no, they need to learn.
And it's kind of like the difference between, like, I mean, this kind of comes up a bit, like, later, but, like, Ned and Robert's differences of, like, and it's kind of shown in, he's gotten used to the South and the warmth and the like,
the sort of the pleasures,
right, and so
comforts.
then does look away from kind of the harshness of the world and lets cruelty kind of become part of his life in a big way and stuff with like the Lannisters and stuff like that, and just like accepting like he's like, well, you're not bedding a Lannister, with that, and it's kind of just like allowing that to happen. I don't know, just like the difference in like the kind of the cold, because Ned is more, I don't know, warm as like his soul,
right?
like but
Ned,
but like a harsh exterior, and Robert has a kind of, at least from what I've seen, has a outwardly bubbly, warm exterior with, I think, a bit more cruel, cold interior.
Yeah, I think that very much makes sense, and especially with like, it's like early on seeing how Robert and Ned sort of like contrast with each other, because Ned he's very like, he's a fair and just guy. But justice can be cold. Yeah. And so, and there's like a bit that I find kind of interesting. It's like, in truth, the man was an oath breaker, a deserter from the Night's Watch. No man is more dangerous. The deserter knows his life is forfeit if he is taken, so he will not flinch from any crime, no matter how vile. But you must, and then he goes on to like, it's not why, and that was kind of interesting to me, because it's like deserters are dangerous because if they're found, they'll be killed. So they'll resort to anything. So we have to kill them. And it's like, that's...
It's causing some of that desperation.
Exactly. and there's definitely like a thing with like the North where it's like the North is cold and harsh, so we have to kind of like work together. But that can mean like, well, if you're a deserter, that's the end of it. You get your
warmth through connection.
And you gotta be strong, but you don't have to be strong alone. Bran is with his brothers and with his father, like, they're out here together, and like, and it's like wild, because then like after it happens, like Bran's like, all right, I'm okay with this, and like everything's fine, and then like, Jon and Rob are pretty immediately like, all right, race ya, on their horses or whatever. In part, like, I think trying to sort of like keep things light for Bran and like be brothers together and stuff, while Theon is a dick, because he's like laughing and cruel. And Greyjoy was laughing and joking as he rode, and
because he like made fun of the guy that was like being executed and stuff like that.
And like whenever the guy gets his like head cut off, I think he like laughs.
Oh, he just like kicks it or some shit.
Yeah. The head bounced off a thick root and rolled. It came up near Greyjoy's feet. Theon was a lean, dark youth of 19 who found everything amusing. He laughed, put his boot on the head, and kicked it away. Ass, Jon muttered. He put his hand on Bran's shoulder, and Bran looked over at his bastard brother. You did well, Jon told him solemnly. Jon was 14, an old hand at justice. So it's like, if at like 7, like Jon's had like 7 years of this. Of like coming out here with his dad, like watching these things happen, like getting just sort of accustomed to this kind of thing. And he takes it very seriously, while Theon laughs about it and doesn't take it seriously. And then they ride off and they find the direwolf. The direwolf that has been impaled by a stag, a stag's horn. And birthed these pups. A wolf, Rob told him. A freak, Greyjoy said. Look at the size of it. It's to direwolf. And again, Theon being like a freak.
Yep.
He's very sort of
yeah, immediately, And then they want to, like, kill them or whatever, and then...
Yeah, it's like they won't survive as pups without their mother, so we should just kill them now. It's because then it's like, we should just kill them now. It'll be kinder than them freezing to death, which is again very his sort of like harsh but kind mentality. You know, they're like, no, we'll raise them and take care of them, and they kind of go back and forth about it a little while.
And he's like, it's like a sign, or and all of that.
And Jon's like, there's
5 of them, but he like doesn't include himself. And then there's another who is like, you know, kind of an outcast that they find afterwards. It's like albino or something.
Yep, it's an albino one. It's got white. It's all white fur, and I think it's got like red eyes.
Yeah.
Like you do when you have albinism. And it's like, yep, this one will be mine.
I'm pretty sure I remember one of them dying, and I'm not happy, and I'm really upset about it, and I don't remember when or where or whose or anything, and I'm prematurely upset.
Yeah, it's very because, like, you know, again, it's like we haven't gotten there yet, but it's another one of those things that's sort of like subverting.
Oh, I might have actually remembered it.
Yeah.
I may have. I don't.
It's another one of those things of sort of subverting your fantasy expectations, where it's like, oh yeah, that these 5 children and their 5 magical direwolves. Yeah. You know, it's like, I mean, direwolves are sort of like...
With the way he's doing like symbolism and signs and all of that, I think that probably means one of them will die.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just very like, you know.
Yeah.
I like the mother direwolf being killed with the stag, and like Ned and all. All of that happening, and then the 6 puppies.
We all know what happens to Ned,
right? Like you can't not. You can't not.
It's the thing everyone knows about Game of Thrones, because it was the thing that made Game of Thrones so like,
popular, basically
popular and famous. Where it was just like, oh, it's willing to kill
the guy who's supposed to be the, you know.
Yep, it's like this guy was kind of our, you know, protagonist in a sense, you know. It's
our
like,
perspective, our, you know, like
we start by like
our kind of paragon.
Yeah, exactly, and then, you know. Yep. So yeah, and the thing is that's like, don't Jon's like, don't you hear it? None of them else hear it. The other pup, but then he goes and finds it. And later we get a lot of mention about his direwolf and how it never makes a sound. But then
because it's like ghost.
Yep, never makes a sound, but right there at the beginning made a sound that only Jon could hear.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. It's just one of those little things that you're like, oh, that's, you know, and that's it for Bran.
Yeah.
For the Bran chapter. Anything else you want to...
No, I don't think so.
Alrighty. Alright, Catelyn I. First Catelyn perspective chapter. She'd never liked this Godswood.
Yeah.
Yep, we're in the Godswood, which I think it's like, I think they say that like each of the like castles or whatever, like basically all the castles have a Godswood, but that the one from her place back home was very different from the one here, because like up here in the north they have different trees and it's all snowy. And at the heart of the Godswood is the weirwood tree that's all like white and red and has the face carved in it that's like red sap coming down like it's bleeding. It's, you know, it's very intense.
That was something that I remember, like a picture from this book that I just like had in my head from like reading this years ago and stuff. Yep.
The heart tree, Ned called it. The weirwood's bark was white as bone, its leaves dark red like 1,000 blood-stained hands. A face had been carved in the trunk of the tree, its features long and melancholy, the deep-cut eyes red with dried sap and strangely watchful. They were old, those eyes, older than Winterfell itself. Yep. And they had seen Brandon the Builder set the first stone. Brandon the Builder is a name that you will hear.
Got you.
The mythical builder of Castle Winterfell. And we will also eventually hear who Bran is named after. Brandon And then, yeah. Bran, just...
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, minor little detail that we haven't gotten to yet, but, you've also read this book, so... Yep, and found her husband beneath the weirwood. The great sword ice was across his lap, and he was cleaning the blade in those waters black as night. He's cleaning his sword after the execution in the Godswood, and she's come to see him, talking about, like, he always comes here after killing someone to, like, have the quiet or whatever. Ned's very sort of, like... meditative kind of guy.
Yeah, and he likes it there, and she, like, he like, finds peace there, and she does not.
She does not.
And she doesn't like being, like, kind of here in where she is in the north, and either.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Catelyn, he said, his voice was distant and formal. Where are the children? He would always ask her that.
Yeah.
They have, like, their relationship is kind of cold, and, like, we see that, like, especially, like, later when we get Catelyn's perspective again, that Catelyn does love him.
Yeah.
Like, very much does love him. And he, I believe, like, loves her, but it's just that there's, like...
Yeah.
He's a cold man.
Yeah.
He is cold and he is distant, and he's a good guy, but he's not, like, a warm and personable guy in that way.
I think he loves her as the mother of his children.
Yeah.
Not as Catelyn.
Yeah. I think that he doesn't know what to do with Catelyn the person.
Yeah. I think from the very brief, bit, I think he loved that, like Jon's mom.
Yeah.
As a person.
Yeah.
And loves Catelyn for what she gave to him.
Yeah.
And stuff. Not, like, I think he, like, does care about her, but, like, just can't...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like he cares about her in the way that, like, Ned cares about people in general. Right. He's trying to do right by her and to be a sort of good husband to her, but he is not, like... But like, in what way? Just sort of like... He's more so trying to be a good Lord of Winterfell.
Right.
Than he is trying to be, like, first and foremost, a good husband to her.
Yeah.
He's just trying not to be...
And even a good father.
Yeah. He's just, like, he's trying to be... good, and like all he really knows how to do is be like good in this way of like justice and honor and that sort of stuff, but like how to
person to person
I feel like he kind of struggles. And talking about arguing about what to name the wolf pups. Arya is already in love and Sansa is charmed and gracious, but Rickon is not quite sure. Is he afraid? A little. He's only 3.
Yeah.
He must learn to face his fears. He will not be 3 forever, and winter is coming. Yep, and that's how... Because it's like, he cares, but the way that he shows his care and affection is that he's trying to prepare them.
Yeah.
He's like, you need to be ready for all the, like, harsh things. And we know that, like he was with...
he saw war.
Yeah, he saw, like, war with Robert, like years ago whenever he got Robert put on the throne. He was in, like, a war. Yeah. And, like, had to deal with...
And saw... In the Dany section, like, hearing about, like, the I've forgotten their names now.
Yeah.
Valyrians? No, Targaryens.
Yeah, the Targaryens.
Like, God,
yeah.
Fucking
died. I mean, they are Valyrian, because it's like the from old Valyria is where the Targaryens came.
Right. The Targaryens, like, like that, like, kind of crazy cruelty. And, just, like, all of that.
Yeah.
I got you off
No, you're good. You're good.
Topic.
No, you're good. It's like he saw war with, like, Robert and all the like cruelty that was going on with the Targaryens before, and then, like, during the war and all that sort of stuff. So he's like, he lost his, like, sister. Because, like, whenever we're with Robert, we're, like, visiting his sister in, like, the crypt. Yeah. So it's like he lost his brother as well, he says in, like, the second Catelyn one. So he's like, he's really been through it, and so he's like, and he feels like, all right, you gotta be tough, and you gotta be able to, like, withstand these things. So I'm trying to, make sure that my children will survive the hard things that might come, because it's like, I mean, he wasn't expecting
right
all this stuff to happen. He's very much like stuff shouldn't have happened, and, like, I shouldn't be the one who's the Lord of, but that's kind of getting a little bit ahead. But yeah, it's very much like he's trying to sort of protect his children by making them hard enough to survive, but it makes him kind of tough interpersonally. Yeah, winter is coming. The Stark words. Every noble house had its words. They boasted of honor, glory, promised loyalty and truth, swore faith and courage. All but the Starks. Winter is coming. Were the Stark words. Not the first time. Not for the first time she reflected on what a strange people these Northerners were. Because she's from the Riverlands, I believe. And that's like, you know, there's maps. Boy, are there maps. That get like real detailed in the like world of Ice and Fire and stuff. But she's from like a little bit farther south than he is. Yeah, the man died well. I'll give him that. I was glad for Bran's sake. You would have been proud of Bran. I'm always proud of Bran. You know, it's like he did well, you'd be proud of her. And she's like, I'm always proud of him. He's my son. Yeah. And also her, like, favorite child, which is fucked up.
Yeah, I understand her mostly. Mm-hmm. She definitely is,
Oh, yeah. It's wild how much Bran is just, like, her favorite.
Yeah.
Because, like, we get that in, like, her next perspective, but... Strawb got new glasses and can see now.
Yeah, I'm like looking at the screen. I just like put them on. I'm getting dizzy from them, so I can't really.
Gotta get like adjusted.
I gotta get adjusted to them, but I'm like looking at the waveforms and I'm like, whoa! You can see all the spikes.
Yep.
Sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah, and then there's a bit where they're talking about like his sword, ice, Valyrian steel. It had been forged in Valyria before the doom had come to the old freehold, when the ironsmiths had worked their metal with spells as well as hammers. 400 years old it was, and as sharp as the day it was forged, because Valyrian steel will come up. Yeah, the name it bore was older still, a legacy from the Age of Heroes, when the Starks were kings in the north. Yeah, the poor man was half mad. Something had put a fear in him so deep that my words would not reach him. And it's like, nah. Yeah, Ben writes that the strength of the Night Watch is down below 1,000. It's not only desertion, they are losing men on rangings as well. Is it the wildlings? Who else? Yeah, who else could it be?
Right.
Obviously, it's just, you know, it's the wildlings. You know how they are. And he's like, oh, one of these days I might have to go beyond the wall and fight this Mance Raider, king in the north.
Yeah.
Who's like the leader of the wildlings. Everyone's real worried about that. There are darker things beyond the wall. The others are as dead as the children of the forest, gone 8,000 years. Maester Lewin will tell you they never lived at all. No living man has ever seen one. Until this morning, no living man had ever seen a direwolf either. I ought to know better than to argue with a Tully, he said, with a rueful smile. Yep. So, and she's coming to tell him that Jon Arryn's dead.
Yeah. Like, her, like, brother-in-law?
Yes, that would be her brother-in-law. So, Ned had fostered at the Eyrie, and the childless Lord Arryn had become a second father to him and his fellow ward, Robert Baratheon. When the Mad King, Aerys II Targaryen, had demanded their heads, the Lord of the Eyrie had raised his Moon and Falcon banner in revolt rather than give up those he had pledged to protect. His second father had become a brother as well, as he and Ned stood together in the Septet River Run to wed two sisters, the daughters of Lord Hoster Tully. So, Ned married Catelyn, and Jon Arryn married Catelyn's sister, Lysa.
Got you.
Yeah. And they had, like, he had, like, been like how Theon is to, you know, he was a ward. Like Theon is ward to him, so he had been ward to them with Robert Baratheon. So him and Robert are almost like brothers in a sense.
Yeah.
And Jon Arryn was kind of like a father, but then also weirdly his brother-in-law.
Right.
There's a lot of weird family dynamics.
Yeah.
Which I feel like George has a lot of fun with the just like historical nobility.
Yeah.
Having these
crazy like family stuff.
Where it's like all these different European noble houses are all just like intermarrying with each other and with themselves and all this sort of stuff, and he gets a big kick out of writing that kind of stuff. Yep. And Maester Pycelle was helpless, but he brought the milk of the poppy, so Jon did not linger long in pain. And the Eyrie is high and lonely. Because like Lysa's going back to the Eyrie,
right,
which is like in the mountains or whatever. And so all these different names get brought up: Riverrun, the Vale. Your uncle waits in the Vale, does he not? Knight of the Gate, Brendan. Just like more names, more places just thrown at you. Go to her, take the children, fill her halls with noise and shouts and laughter. That boy of hers needs other children about him, and Lysa should not be alone in her grief. Would that I could. The letter had other tidings. The king is riding to Winterfell to seek you out.
Right.
And it's interesting how, like, Ned is like, you and the kid should go there and be happy.
Right.
Go and, like, be happy, but he's got to stay here and like, run things. And I think he does, like, want them to, like, you should go be happy with it.
Yeah,
Y'all will be much happier there.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, Robert's coming here, and he smiles. He's happy to see Robert, while Catelyn's a little bit more like,
Yeah.
I wish he could share his joy. A dire wolf, dead in the snow, a broken antler in his throat. She keeps, like, thinking about it.
Yeah.
We should send word to your brother on the wall. Oh, yeah. We should force herself to smile at this man she loved, this man who put no faith in signs.
Yeah.
He's a very sort of, like, practical, what's right in front of you kind of guy, and not worried about that sort of thing. The Queen's brothers are also in the party. Ned Grimace, there was small love between him and the Queen's family. The Lannisters of Castle Rock had come late to Robert's cause when victory was all but certain, and he had never forgiven them. So it's like, it's not even that they didn't help, it's just that they were, like, opportunistic about it. They were just like, which is very Lannister.
Wouldn't switch sides until it was obvious that would, be the winning.
Yeah. Yep, and Prince Tommen is 7, just like Bran. It's like the same as Bran. Please, Ned, guard your tongue. The Lannister woman is our queen.
Yeah. And
her pride is said to grow with every passing year. Yep. So we get all that. Yeah. Anything else?
Nah.
Yeah, it's, again, more just kind of...
like, set up and getting character.
Setting up, getting characters. We're constantly dropping names of things, people, places, and whatnot. But yeah, that's Catelyn. And now the Dany chapter.
Yeah.
which is uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's pretty uncomfy, but I think that's what it's supposed to be. It's uncomfy.
Oh yeah, and it's very much like, from the perspective of Dany being uncomfortable and just like wanting to just like, there's a lot of...
she is uncomfortable, but then doesn't feel like she can be uncomfortable, due to just, her entire situation.
Yep, she's not allowed to. A princess, Dany thought. She had forgotten what that was like. Perhaps she had never really known, because she's in exile with her brother.
Because, like, she's basically being kind of put
through
the ringer because her brother wants to kind of get back what he remembers or what he barely remembers in his...
his time being, like, a prince.
And so, like, he's just trying to kind of regain that.
Yep.
She doesn't care.
She really doesn't. She's, like, she's only ever really heard stories about Westeros.
Yeah.
And, because they're over in Essos.
Yeah, it just doesn't mean anything to her.
No, she's been, like, living here in the Free Cities, and is, she has, like, fond memories of, like, there was, like, this knight who had, like, taken them away, like, gotten them across the sea, and he was, like, sick and bedridden, and was, like, rough with the staff, but nice to her, and she's, like, remembers fondly, like, that time, and, like, and, like, looks at, like, the children laughing in the street, they're, like, barefoot and dirty, but not having to, like, worry about any of this stuff.
Right.
And she wishes that she could have just been one of them. But instead she's got to, like, be married off to Khal Drogo to get her brother an army, because he's like, well, I rightfully
should be
on the throne. Yeah. And Dany's just like, I want to go home. And he's like, how can we go home? Home is Westeros, but home's not Westeros to her.
No.
And she's just like scared.
She's like, she thinks like of a house with a red door or whatever.
Mm-hmm. The house with the red door and like, the lemon trees or something.
Yeah, that was like home, to her or whatever, the closest thing.
Yep. And Viserys is not a great brother to have.
No.
Yeah, she knew better than to question her brother when he wove his webs of dream. His anger was a terrible thing when roused. Viserys called it waking the dragon.
Yeah.
Which is just also like, dude, you're calling your own angry outburst waking the dragon, because he's just so...
It's very young, like, cringy, trying to show your power type of thing.
He's such a edgelord.
Oh, yeah.
He's such an absolute edgelord.
Absolutely.
And it's just a whole thing. And they're with Magister Illyrio, a dealer in spices, gemstones, dragonbone, and other less savory things. And he's the guy that they're like sort of staying with right now. He's the one who's sort of like watching over them and trying to like put this thing together with Viserys. Like him and Viserys talk at one point, and like, you know, he says something that like upsets Viserys, and he's like, oh no, of course, you know, he's just like
sucking up, and
very much like sucking up to him and sort of like playing to his ego, and you know, but he's the one who's actually like putting together this like whole thing with Khal Drogo. Yeah, somewhere beyond the sunset, across the narrow sea, lay a land of green hills and flowered plains and great rushing rivers, where towers of dark stone rose amidst magnificent blue-gray mountains, and armored knights rode to battle beneath the banners of their lords. The Dothraki called the lands Raish Andali, the land of the Andals. In the free cities, they talked of Westeros and the Sunset Kingdoms. Yep. Her brother had a simpler name. Our land, he called it.
Yeah.
The words were like a prayer with him, and if he said them enough, the gods were sure to hear. Yep. You do not steal from dragons. Oh no, the dragon remembers.
Yeah.
He's always talking about dragons. He's always like, we're the dragons. The dragon remembers. He's trying to hold on to it so tightly when he has nothing.
Yeah.
He has absolutely nothing.
Yeah, he's barely a memory.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's all this... we get a lot of, like...
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, names and stuff mentioned of, like, you know, his side of the war and such. Like, all of those types of names and stuff.
Yeah, we get, she was born in Dragonstone.
Yeah.
And there was, like, a terrible storm going on when she was born. And... You know, it's like they were, like, fleeing from all this, like, stuff that was happening when she was born. Viserys was born pre all of this stuff happening. He had some amount of, like, memory. Yeah. But, like, by the time they're, like, having to, like, go into hiding and flee and stuff, that's, like, when she's, like, born.
Right.
And then, like, her mother dies, and all of her other members of her family die. And so it's like she remembers... Like, literally none of it. She was born under very harsh circumstances. And her brother Rhaegar was the one who was killed by Robert.
Yeah.
Viserys is called... in the alleys and wine sinks of Pentos, they called her brother the Beggar King.
Yeah.
They did not want to know what they called her. We'll have it all back someday, sweet sister.
Yeah.
All Dany wanted back was the big house with the red door, the lemon tree outside her window, the childhood she had never known. Yeah, it's all just very sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're getting her, like, dressed up for this, like, wedding thing, and he's being all, like, weird and creepy with her because the Targaryens are all about incest.
Yep.
At one point, she's even like, she just assumed that she would
marry
that Viserys, she would just end up marrying Viserys at some point, and so it's kind of weird to her that she's marrying Khal Drogo. Khal Drogo was so rich, even his slaves wore golden collars. She felt a sudden chill, and Gooseflesh pimpled her bare arms because they gave her like a gold, like necklace essentially. May the Lord of Light shower you with blessings on this most fortunate day. So I get more just sort of like, you know, just like little hints of like the religion in the world. We haven't gone into like any of them super deep yet,
right?
But just like little passing phrases and stuff. For centuries, the Targaryens had married brother to sister since Aegon the Conqueror had taken his sisters as to bride. The line must be kept pure. Viserys had told her 1,000 times. Theirs was the king's blood. Yeah. Do you take me for a fool? I take you for a king. Kings lack the caution of common men. My apologies if it gave you offense. Just like he's just really good at that kind of stuff. But also like Viserys is so easy to play because he's just like
any flattery he just immediately takes to heart.
Yep, he's just like a shit teen who takes any flattery to heart, and you know he's like all I need is 10,000 Dothraki and I can retake Westeros. Yeah, that's a good plan. I'm sure that's gonna go great for you.
Yeah,
it's like it's a whole continent essentially, and you're like, yeah, just 10,000 men.
It's not just a city.
Yes,
a small city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
10,000. Yeah, that's not.
But also, there's a whole thing. It's like, yes. The realm will rise to its rightful king. Tyrell, Redwine, Darry, Greyjoy, they have no more love for the usurper than I do. The Dornishmen burn to avenge Aelia and her children, and the small folk will be with us. They cry out for their king. He looked at Alyra anxiously. They do, don't they?
Yeah.
He's just like, yes, it'll be so easy because everyone wants us. Yeah. Everyone wants us to come back. It's like, well, if they really wanted you, why are you having to do all this?
Yeah.
You know? But the small folk, they cry out for their king to return.
Yeah, and then he's like, oh, yes, they meet in secret and toast to your name or stuff like that.
Yep. I have that right here. Hold fast all across the realm. Men lift secret toasts to your health, while women sew dragon banners and hide them against the day you return. Yeah. Or so my agents tell me.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Dany had no agents, no way of knowing what anyone was doing or thinking across the narrow sea, but she mistrusted Illyria's sweet words. Yeah. I shall kill the usurper myself, he promised, as he killed my brother Rhaegar. Yeah, it's all just like that's a lot of what this chapter
is kind of their
just sort of like establishing their situation and how like the difference between Viserys and Dany. Yeah, the difference between Daenerys and Viserys.
Yeah.
These names.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough that we already have Robb and Robert. Robb Stark and Robert Baratheon, who I believe, like, yeah. And then I think Lysa's child is Robin. But is like I think they do say is named after Robert.
Gotcha.
So it's like everyone's names like because George has said this specifically, where it's like, they tell you not to like have names that are too similar, but when you go back and you read history,
it's it's just a billion Jameses.
Yep, it's like
50 Roberts.
Yep,
it really is. Like
yep, it's like the history of England is all just James and Johns.
and
Roberts. And Richards.
Yeah, how did I forget the Johns?
Yep, we can't forget the Johns. And we get to see Khal Drogo and his sort of like some of his people when they go to his manse, and he was a head taller than the tallest man in the room, yet somehow light on his feet, as graceful as the panther in Illyria's menagerie. He was younger than she thought, no more than 30, which is still too old for you to be marrying this 14-year-old. And she asked, like, am I not too young? And it's like, you've had your first period, you're woman enough for him. His skin was the color of polished copper, his thick mustachios bound in gold and bronze rings. And do you see his braid, sweet sister? It rang softly with tiny bells, and went past his buttocks down to his thighs. Because in Dothraki culture, whenever you lose a battle, you have your hair cut, and he's never lost a battle, so his braid is just so long. And then there's Ser Jorah Mormont.
Yeah.
A knight who's also there.
Yeah, he's just like chilling there.
Yeah, he's just chilling there. He was he sold some poachers to a Tyroshi slaver instead of giving them to the Night's Watch. Absurd law. A man should be able to do what he likes with his own chattel. So he's like on the run from, like, he's left Westeros for being a slaver, but you know.
Yeah.
There are no slaves in the Free City, but they were slaves anyway.
Yeah.
It was another bit that I had highlighted. And yeah, so she sees him and it's like, I don't want to do this. Yeah. I want to go home.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's no home. And he's also like, I'd let his whole Khalasar fuck you if need be, sweet sister. All 40,000 men and their horses too, if that's just what it took to get my army. Be grateful, it is only Drogo. In time, you may even learn to like him.
Yeah.
He's just like...
He's horrible.
He's very upfront about, like, don't give a shit. Yeah. And it's like, he doesn't even frame it as, like, for us.
No, it's for me.
It's for me.
Yeah.
It's entirely for him.
Yeah.
And it's just, you should be grateful that it's not worse than it is.
Yeah.
And it's like... You know, we all know Khal Drogo from the show. Yeah. He was a big deal. He was Jason Momoa. Everyone loves Jason Momoa. And we love Khal Drogo. But also, you know, he was... It's like... Could have been worse.
I feel like that's Game of Thrones.
Yeah, with Game of Thrones, it's like, hey, could have been worse. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, smile and stand up straight. Nair smiled and stood up straight. Yeah. Yeah, she's very much trapped. Right now. Yeah. It's and you know, knowing how sort of Dany ends up, you know, how she, you know, her sort of pop culture influence. Mother of Dragons and badass and all this sort of stuff, and you know, sort of seeing where she kind of like starts out there in the very beginning. Yeah. And you know, in the show, it's Emilia Clarke. Who's a fully adult woman. Right. and it's like, it's not great what's, you know, still the whole stuff with Drogo. Right. But it's just made all the worse in the books by being, you know, 14 years old and all that. Yeah. 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 So getting Dany's situation all set up. It's what, you know, a lot of these first chapters that we're reading is very much just sort of getting everything set up, knowing where the pieces are, where everyone's starting, so that we can, you know, see where they go. Yeah. Alrighty. And now Ned's perspective chapter.
Yeah, because they're going to they meet with Robert.
Yep, it's like, the visitors poured through the castle gates in a river of gold and silver and polished steel, 300 strong. So it's like all these knights and bannermen and Robert and all of his people come in, and they're having a big feast. Sir Jaime Lannister, with hair as bright as beaten gold, and there Sandor Clegane with his terrible burned face. The tall boy beside him could only be the crown prince, and that stunted little man behind him was surely the imp, Tyrion Lannister. So we're just, you know. Yeah. Again, very dense, just like, bullet point. Here's all the people who are here. And then we get the description of Robert, who's like a huge man at the head of the column. Seemed almost a stranger to Ned until he vaulted off the back of his warhorse with a familiar roar and crushed him in a bone-crunching hug. Ned! Ned, but it is good to see that frozen face of yours. King looked him over from top to bottom. You have not changed at all. Meanwhile, Robert's changed quite a lot. Yeah. 15 years passed. Yep. Yeah, it was 15 years ago when they won him the throne. He'd been clean-shaven, clear-eyed, and muscled like a maiden's fantasy. 6.5 feet tall, he towered over lesser men, and when he donned his armor and the great antlered helmet of his house, he seemed a venerable giant. In those days, the smell of leather and blood had clung to him like perfume. Now it was perfume that clung to him like perfume. He had a girth to match his height. Yep. Had last seen the king 9 years before, during Balon Greyjoy's rebellion, when the stag and the direwolf had joined to end the self-proclaimed King of the Iron Islands. Which is what led to them having Theon Greyjoy.
Got you.
Yeah, Balon Greyjoy was like, I'm King of the Iron Islands, and so they put down his little rebellion and took Theon as a hostage.
Oh, yeah, well, that would be probably why he's a dick.
Yeah, that probably has something to do with him being a dick. Ned had taken his son Theon as hostage and ward. The king had gained at least 8 stone, a beard as coarse and black as iron, wire covering his jaw. Yep. Yeah, so it's like, he treats Theon well. You know, he's my ward that I took from the other guy to be like, hey, don't, go causing rebellions again. I have your son.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very plush kind of hostage situation, but also it is a hostage situation. And that probably does explain a little bit of why Theon's such a dick.
It's like, you wouldn't expect to be nice to your captor's kids.
No.
You know.
Yeah. And so Robert and Ned go down to the crypt.
Yep.
And Cersei doesn't want them to, but Ned's like, Robert's
like, fuck you, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah, Robert's like, fuck off. And
she's not happy about it.
No, she is not happy about it. And you know,
probably because for a few reasons. I think.
For a lot of reasons, they do not have a good relationship.
No. Partially because probably because she said no, and he just because she said no.
Yeah.
And then he did.
Mm-hmm.
Would be enough to make her angry.
Yeah.
Even without any other
like baggage from before.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the fact that she's like, no, maybe don't do that now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And especially because it's like he's going to go see the woman that he was going to marry.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like he's still so like attached to her in this way. He's going down to the crypt, and he's like, you know, she should. It's like, you know, this is a terrible place.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's like, she should be in under the sun, and
she should be like on a hilltop under the sun with, you know, breeze and flowers and all this sort of stuff, and it's
which is still very like their kind of summer versus winter kind of.
Yep, for sure.
Everything.
She deserved more than darkness. She was a Stark of Winterfell. This is her place. She should be on a hill somewhere, under a fruit tree. I was with her when she died, Ned reminded the king. She wanted to come home, to rest beside Brandon and father. He could hear her still at times. Promise me, she had cried, in a room that smelled of blood and roses. Promise me, Ned. So it's like she wanted to be buried here with her family, and he's like but he's so caught up on this, like, the idea this, like, you know, perfect, beautiful grave for her. It's like, because he just can't, like, let go in that sense, and it's very much his image of her. But it's like, you're talking to her brother, right? Who was like there when she died,
right?
You know, and there's a whole thing, like, they're in the crypts, and in the crypts, it's like there are these like carved statues of the people in the crypt, the people buried there. And the Lords of Winterfell, they have like an iron sword placed over their lap to keep their like spirit. Keep their spirits at bay, essentially. Gotcha. That's always something that I remember. Between the pillars, the dead sat on their stone thrones against the walls, backs against the sepulchres that contained their mortal remains. Their likenesses were carved into the stone that sealed the tombs. Great stone direwolves curled around their feet. The shifting shadows made the stone figure seem to stir as the living passed by. By ancient custom, an iron longsword had been laid across the lap of each who had been Lord of Winterfell to keep the vengeful spirits in their crypts. The oldest had long ago rusted away to nothing, leaving only a few red stains where the metal had rested on stone. Ned wondered if that meant those ghosts were free to roam the castle now. He hoped not. Yeah. It's very spooky down here. And so Robert's like, fuck this.
It's spooky.
It's spooky
and cold.
It's spooky and cold, and my would-have-been wife should have been on a nice sunny hill somewhere.
And caves are already, like, cold. Like, let alone...
Like up in the north. Yeah.
Like, we, went on, like, vacation a few years ago. We went to a mine, like, in the UP, like, Michigan.
Yeah.
And we, like, we got to, like, climb down this whole, like, mine shaft and everything. We got to rappel down and all of that. Point is, it was like an ice cave. So, like, all year round, it stays cold enough they would store ice down there all year round and all of that. It was crazy because it was, like, summer. And, like, as we were going down, you can see your breath, and it gets
colder and colder.
Yep. It was quite cold down there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and then also when they're down there, they see, like, his brother Brandon's grave.
Yeah.
Or crypt. Brandon had been 20 when he died, strangled by order of the Mad King Aerys Targaryen only a few short days before he was to wed Catelyn Tully of Riverrun. His father had been forced to watch him die. He was the true heir, the eldest born to rule. Lyanna had only been 16, a child woman of surpassing loveliness. Ned had loved her with all his heart. Robert had loved her even more. She was to have been his bride. Yeah. She was more beautiful than that, the king said after a silence, his eyes lingering on Lyanna's face as if he could will her back to life. Yeah. He's just, like, so fixated.
Yeah.
And this also, like, goes to highlight a little bit. It's like his brother was the one who was supposed to marry Catelyn.
Yeah.
And now he's married to her instead because of, like, essentially, like, tradition.
Right.
And so he's just kind of like, I think it's just awkward for him in a lot of ways. It's awkward for the both of them. It's just like this. It wasn't supposed to be like this.
Right.
And again, when we were talking about the whole, like, the cruelty of, like, the Targaryens and like the sort of the difference of, like, the father being forced to watch his son get executed, get, like, strangled to death, versus, like, Ned taking his kids to go watch him perform an execution.
Right.
And it's just, like, weird little, like, parallels like that. Yeah. I was with her when she died. She wanted to come home to rest beside Brandon and father. Yeah, I already read that. Yeah, they had found him still holding her body, silent with grief. The little Cranagman, Howland Reed, had taken her hand from his. Ned could recall none of it. I bring her flowers when I can, he said. Lyanna was fond of flowers.
Yeah.
So, you know, I vowed to kill Rhaegar for what he did to her. You did. Only once, Robert said bitterly. In my dreams, I kill him every night. 1,000 deaths will still be less than what he deserves.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robert he became king over...
Right. Like, basically revenge.
Over basically revenge. And so it's like, yeah, no wonder he's not like a great king.
No.
he comes here to be like, you should be the hand of the king. Essentially,
do my job, please.
Do my job for me, please, because he's like, he wanted revenge and he got it, and he also became king in the process, but he doesn't really care about being king.
Right.
And so now he's just like, you do it.
And he doesn't quite have the same sense of like honor and stuff that like Ned has. Yeah. And like, I mean, I think he knows that, like, if he asks, you know, because of his honor, like he almost has to. Yeah, he kind of like
yeah, it's like Ned. It's like Ned both as just like a sort of like a subject, or like a lord under the king, and like Ned cares so much about like
that structure, that hierarchy,
that structure, and also just like person to person.
Yeah,
it's
he
like,
respects him, and
it's like, you're my friend, so like do this for me.
Yeah.
And he's also like should should marry
Sansa and Joffrey
and Joffrey, and Ned's like, oh wow, it's like that's crazy, but like, okay, and it's like, you know, she'll be queen eventually.
That's like a great like move, like, you know, politically and such for the families.
Ned, you are still too serious. And he has a line about, like, you know, they say it's so cold up in the north that, you know, laughter freezes in your throat and chokes you, and it's just like, God damn it, Ned, you're so... It's like, just calm down a little bit. I'd say chill out, but it's just... Yeah,
I'm already to
It
didn't work.
Yeah, these are difficult times. I need good men about me. Men like Jon Arryn. He served as Lord of the Eyrie, as Warden of the East, as the hand of the king. And he will not be easily replaced. His son will succeed him to the Eyrie and all of its incomes, no more. It's like you should give him like the title as like a, you know, it's like, oh, it's his father's, and so you should just like give him the title just as like a make him feel better kind of thing, even though he's only 6. He's like, a 6-year-old boy is no war leader, Ned. In peace, the title is only an honor. Let the boy keep it for his father's sake, if not for his own. Surely you owe Jon that much for his service. But it's like, no. Yeah. This isn't about that. This is about you being the hand of the king now that Jon Arryn's no longer the hand of the king, because he's fucking dead.
Yeah.
His son can have the other titles. Right. You need to be hand of the king. And I want you down at King's Landing, not up here at the end of the world, where you are no damned use to anybody. It's like, but I just want to... It's like, I just want to be in my cold little castle with my family.
And honestly, he probably is better use up here.
Yeah.
You know, like with, like, because we know that there's stuff happening.
Yep, this like up north, up beyond the wall. And
so, like, it is actually probably where he should have been.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yep. And so he's like, it's all flattering. I am not worthy of the honor. If I wanted to honor you, I'd let you retire. I am planning to make you run the kingdom and fight the wars while I eat and drink and wench myself to an early grave. You know the saying about the king and his hand. What the king dreams, the hand builds. I betted a fish maid once who told me that the lowborn have a choicer way of putting it. The king eats, they say, and the hand takes the shit. Yeah. Yeah. He threw back his head and roared his laughter. It's like, oh, you know, they're friends. He's kind of joking, but he's also like, when you talk about like his bubbly sort of warm personality, but inside he's like, no, I'm here to make you do my job for me while
I want to fuck around and
drink and eat and die.
Yep, exactly.
And he's like, all right, well, you know, let me think on it.
Yep.
These honors are also unexpected. May I have some time to consider? I need to tell my wife. Yes, of course. Tell Catelyn. Sleep on it if you must. Just don't keep me waiting too long. I am not the most patient of men.
Yeah. And it's not really a think about it. It's
you gotta. It's like
tell your wife that you're going.
That you're going. You know. It's
it's
like think on it if it makes you feel better or whatever. Yeah, it's, you know, him and Robert, they go way back, but Robert's kind of a different man, but he's also kind of always been this man. Right. And that's a part of it, you know? I think
Ned wants better of him in general.
Yep.
You know.
Yep, I think so too.
And sees better in him.
Sees the ability for him to do better and be better. But he doesn't really care.
Yeah.
He's just like, and he's always like, the others take my wife. You know, it's just like, you know, these Lannisters or whatever.
I'm not responsible for it. It's, you know, it's very hands off.
Yep, he's openly just like sleeping with like random other people. You know, just like, I betted a fish maid once. He's just like, it's you really see the difference between the two here in this one. I feel like it's such a good chapter for that, for like establishing kind of like both of their characters in that way, and getting things set up for he's gotta go up to go down, I guess, to the south to King's Landing, and that's Ned's chapter. Yep, and then we get Jon.
Yeah.
Our first Jon perspective chapter.
This is like the feast and everything, right?
Yep, the feast is going on. There were times, not many, but a few, when Jon Snow was glad he was a bastard, as he filled his wine cup once more from a passing flagon.
Yeah, because he got like drunk for the first time.
Yep, it struck him that this might be one of them. It's like, I'm not at the table with them. I'm not under scrutiny right now. I get to just eat and drink here amongst the regular people. Holly's being very cute right now. And y'all don't get to see it, unfortunately. But she's just resting her head in Strawb's hand. No, she's just sleepy and curled up here in front of us. Okay. Yeah, we get like Baratheon's crowned stag, the Lion of Lannister, Stark direwolf, just like the various heraldry and whatnot. And Jon is just kind of doing his thing. He's kind of like seeing everyone, watching everything.
Yeah, notices like kind of tension and stuff. And...
Right, like noticing the tensions going on. He's like, as a bastard, you have to be like aware. You know, you got to be always watching, always listening. The king was a great disappointment to Jon.
Yeah.
He's just like, this guy doesn't look like a king. We get just sort of like, I just have like some names and stuff highlighted because, like, you know, the Princess Myrcella, who's not quite 8. We get Tommen and Arya are like because like they're like walking in like processions and stuff, and we get Sansa, who's a little bit older, with Joffrey. Yeah, Joffrey's 12. Yeah, Joffrey's 12. Is so young. What the fuck? Yeah. They're all tiny. They're so tiny. Yeah. It's like, it's one thing when I'm first reading this in like high school. And I'm like 17, 18, but now that I'm like 27, I'm like, what do you mean he's 12? Yeah. What do you mean they're 14 and shit?
Actual infant.
Actual infant. Jesus Christ. And
then Rickon the newborn.
Yes. Yeah, he's fucking 3 years old. A thick tangle of blonde curls dripped down past his golden choker and high velvet collar. That's Joffrey. Little pretty boy 12-year-old. Yeah. And Sansa as well. And then we get Jaime and Tyrion. The Lion and the Imp. There was no mistaking which was which. Sir Jaime Lannister was twin to Queen Cersei, tall and golden, with flashing green eyes and a smile that cut like a knife. He wore crimson silk, high black boots, a black satin coat. And he's got like a lion sewn to his thing. He called him the Lion of Lannister to his face and whispered Kingslayer behind his back. This is what a king should look like, Jon thought to himself. Yep. And then we get a description of Tyrion. His head was too large for his body, with the brute squashed-in face beneath swollen shelf of a brow. One green eye and one black one peered out from under a lank fall of hair so blonde it seemed white. Jon watched him with fascination. Yep. And then Benjen. He goes and he talks to Benjen, who's like part of the Night Watch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because then they end up like fighting or whatever, and he runs out.
Yeah, he runs out because he's like, I think I want to join the Night Watch, and Benjen's like, you're young. Yeah. And, you know that part of the Night's Watch is that, like, you can't have, like, a family or anything. It's like, maybe you should, like, wait and, like, actually, like, have some experience with, like, he says, like, have some bastards of your own, but he's like, I'll never have any bastards. And it's like, I think Benjen was just trying to, like, have a little joke with him.
But it did not.
But it's like, no, this is actually a bit more of a sore spot with Jon. And it's just like, you don't know what you're giving up. You haven't had any, like, relationships. You haven't, lived any life. You're 14. Right. You need to, like, wait a little bit before you make such a big important decision. But Jon sees it as this way for him to, like, get honor as a bastard.
Right.
Which also we haven't mentioned that he is Jon Snow, because as a bastard you get a name, and each region has their own little name.
Ah, I got you. Yeah.
Which gets sort of like explained more, like it's snow here in the north, but then you get like sand somewhere else, and you get like just these little like names of the land, which I think is just like a fun little like bit of the world building. And it's like, and also he's like, don't you normally sit up with like your siblings and whatnot? And it's like, well, yeah, most times. But tonight, Lady Stark thought I might give insult to the royal family to seat a bastard among them. Yeah. Which, getting into some of the, like, tension between him and Catelyn.
Right.
And how, like, Catelyn sort of, like, treats him.
Yeah.
Because she views him as...
She's really shitty to him.
She is. She's real shitty to him. It's like,
you don't gotta take it out on a kid. Like,
no.
He didn't fucking do anything. And she knows that. She thinks that, too. She's like...
Yeah.
She basically thinks, like, you know, he's a fucking kid.
Yeah.
But she also... She just associates it with the heartbreak of his mom and just like the look of it to other people.
Right. It's very much so much of it's about like the political.
Yeah.
Because like she's very focused on like that kind of like political stuff in a way that Ned isn't.
Yeah.
Ned's concerned with like what's right. She's concerned with like political appearances.
Yeah.
Because she's like, he could be a political rival to Robb.
Yeah, I think she also feels more for Ned romantically than he does for her.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's very much the case. Like, Ned's doing this, is like married her out of like this weird obligation because of like his brother or whatever. Well, she came to actually love him. He's just like, I'm doing what's right and what I need to do. And I will, he's like... Like, Catelyn's fine.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of almost a surrogate for, like, his brother.
Yeah.
In her view. Like, it's not him, but,
Right. Yep. And Jon and him have that fight. Jon ends up, like, going away crying.
Yeah.
Because he's upset about it.
Yeah, and that's when he runs into Tyrion.
Yep.
And they have their conversation.
Their conversation.
And that was something that I like remembered, like just a scene I remembered pretty clearly before rereading this.
Yep. Yeah. The wall's a hard place for a boy, Jon. I'm almost a man grown. You're 14.
Right.
Daeron Targaryen was only 14 when he conquered Dorne. Jon said the young dragon was one of his heroes. A conquest that lasted a summer. Your boy king lost 10,000 men taking the place, and another 50 trying to hold it. Someone should have told him that war isn't a game. Also, Daeron Targaryen was only 18 when he died, or have you forgotten that part?
Yeah.
So it's like, come on now. You gotta be more realistic. And then he's out there. Tyrion shows up. He does this little tumble.
Yeah.
He's described as like looking like a gargoyle up on the wall or whatever, up on the ledge above the door. And so,
and he says like I think like because of everything he was like did like circus stuff or whatever. That's why he did the flip or whatever. Did he say something like that?
I don't think he really explains anything. I think he just kind of like...
I thought he had said something about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I need to put my glasses.
He just kind of like tumbles down.
Okay.
And then it's just like, hey, is that your direwolf? he just no explanation. He doesn't give any explanation as to like why he can do that or say anything really. He's just like, just does it. Yeah, dwarves don't have to be tactful. Generations of capering fools and motley have won me the right to dress badly and say any damn thing that comes into my head.
I think that's like what I was thinking of was him talking about. Making that kind of
that reference. Yeah, about how a lot of dwarfs end up sort of in that kind of like circus realm.
Yeah.
The circus realm.
Magnus.
Yes, very much so. You are the bastard. You have more of the north in you than your brothers. Half brothers. Let me give you some counsel, bastard. Never forget what you are, for surely the world will not. Make it your strength. Then it can never be your weakness. Armor yourself in it, and it will never be used to hurt you.
Yep, I definitely remembered that quote.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a big one. It's a big part of sort of Tyrion's thing. What do you know about being a bastard? All dwarfs are bastards in their father's eyes. Yep. And his mom died in childbirth, as happens a lot in this book. People have made comments about that, about how like because someone once did do, like, a statistical analysis of, like, how many of the women die in childbirth and how it's larger than the actual number of women who die in childbirth in real life. And I'm like, I don't think you can really reasonably expect him to just have that information. Have,
like, the ratio, like, right.
and be, like, writing and be like, I have to make sure I get the balance correctly. It's like, you know. And, like, I do get, like, because, like, you know, the point is being, like, you know, women being more than just, like, tragically dying in childbirth, but it's like there's so many female characters in Game of Thrones as a series that, like, really run the gamut of, like, you know, all sorts of types of personality, you know, women who are more sort of heroic, women who are more villainous, you know, all kinds of things. Not that George is perfect when it comes to to depictions of a lot of this stuff. There is a lot of sort of criticism of that. There's been, like, criticism about, like, his portrayal of, like, sexual assault in his books. And he's always been like, well, you know, they're books about war, and that's a part of, like, it's always been a part of war. But the thing is that, honestly, a lot of I feel like as it goes on, like, most of the sexual assault stuff isn't necessarily in the context of, like, war. It's more in the context of, like, shitty political stuff. Yeah. You know, like with Daenerys and Khal Drogo and whatnot, you know? So it's like, you know, George, not perfect when it comes to his representation of women, but he is trying. Yeah. But yeah, remember this, boy. All dwarfs may be bastards, yet not all bastards need be dwarfs. When he opened the door, the light from within threw his shadow clear across the yard, and for just a moment, Tyrion Lannister stood tall as a king. Yep, very much. He loves his dramatic, like, images and symbols and whatnot. Like,
definitely.
I feel like when I was going through and, like, highlighting, that, like, I've highlighted, like, so much that I'm like not reading, but it's just like that's just such a good little bit of writing and whatnot. But yeah, that's the end of Jon's chapter. You got any more you want to...
No, I think that there was a small little bit where his dog did something, like just, like, chased off another dog or something like that without like, making a noise and anything. Just a super small scene of Ghost there. Yeah,
because it was like a fully grown dog, and Ghost is just kind of like a young pup, silently, like, intimidates the other one because it's just so big. It's like a dire wolf. Because, like, wolves are already huge. Wolves are so huge.
Yeah.
Like, so the idea of, like...
A huger wolf.
Because, like, wolves are so much bigger than you think they are. Because if you think, like, oh, wolf, it's just, like, dog. But, like, the biggest dog next to a wolf are, like, similar, but the wolf is still, like, larger. Right. Wolves are so big. It's crazy. But yeah, that's Jon's chapter. And then Catelyn II, our final chapter for the evening. It's such a funny one. Yeah, this chapter I find, like, the beginning of it very funny. And silly in the way that, like, it's like they're in Winterfell, they're in, like, Catelyn's bedchambers. It's like they were the hottest. There's, like, a natural, like, spring under like geothermal stuff under Winterfell, so there's, like, warm springs, and there's, like, warm water that, like, flows through the walls to, like, keep things warm. And her and Ned just finished having sex, and then Ned's like, time to go brood at the window.
Yeah.
Like,
and he's like, he's too hot and, like, wants the cold. And,
wants the window open.
Out, and she's like, she's cold and stuff with the window open and all of that.
Yeah.
I just like the way he focuses a lot on, like, hot and cold and heat and just. It's just interesting.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that.
And it just, like, a lot of times with different relationships and stuff.
Oh yeah, it's very much, like, full of symbolism in here. It's like, it's a series that's very much about, like, the real human element of it, but it's still full of a lot of that, like, fantasy, like, imagery and symbol and, like, theme and whatnot. But I do just find it funny that, like, it's like he gets up and the first thing
just go
the first thing he's like, I will refuse. Just like, you cannot, you must not. It's like we're having this conversation immediately. Like there's a part where she's like, I still feel him inside me. and like I hope that I can have another like baby with him, and it's like we're immediately just jumping into like
political
like this political stuff. It's like it's so silly to me. But so they're kind of having this conversation. Yeah, Robert would never harm me or any of mine. We were closer than brothers. He loves me. You knew the man. The king is a stranger to you. So it's like, Ned's like, no, like, I can refuse him. We're friends. He'll get mad and he'll yell, but, he'll be fine. He'll be laughing in no time.
Yeah, because he hasn't seen him in all of that.
You haven't seen him in a long time. It's like, yeah, you knew him, but now do you know him anymore? And, talking about... if you're, Robert came all this way to see you, to bring you great honors. You cannot throw them back at him. Honors, in his eyes, yes, and in yours, and in mine. She blazed angry now. Why couldn't he see? He offers his own son in marriage to our daughter. What else would you call that? Sansa might someday be queen.
Yeah.
Her sons could rule from the wall to the mountains of Dorne. What is so wrong with that?
Yeah.
She's just so focused on the political side of it, and just like that conflict between them.
Yeah, and that's so much of how she like grew up too, because like she was also in like a political betrothal and stuff, super young, and
right.
It's just to her, it's just like that's how it is.
Okay, because I think that like the Tullys for the Riverlands are kind of like the Starks are for the North. Yeah, where it's like they're sort of like the major house over there. So she's like also from a major house and is like very politically minded in that way. While Ned's like, I wasn't gonna be the one to inherit.
Yeah. So he wasn't supposed to have to learn all this stuff.
Yeah.
Or like be that invested in all that.
Yep. And I was only 12 when my father promised me to your brother Brandon. That brought a bitter twist to Ned's mouth. Brandon. Yes, Brandon would know what to do.
Yeah.
It was all meant for Brandon. You, Winterfell, everything. He was born to be a king's hand and a father to queens.
Yeah.
Ned feels very sort of like
out of place.
Out of place and like undeserving.
Yeah.
And also just I think kind of like, it's like I shouldn't out of place. I think is very, very right. Eddard Stark had married her in Brandon's place, as custom decreed, but the shadow of his dead brother still lay between them, as did the other, the shadow of the woman he would not name, the woman who had borne him his bastard son. Yep. And then Maester Luwin is like asking to see them. Yeah. He's got like a message.
Yeah. And they're like, really?
They really right now? And it's like Lysa is like he'd been given some sort of gift. And like inside of it there's like a hidden message. Yeah. And that message was written in
like code or something.
Yeah, it's like Lysa and Catelyn had their own little secret language as kids, and she wrote it in that secret language, and Catelyn is like, oh, I can read it. And and also this just like a funny little moment where she's like, because like her and Ned are like both naked because they just finished having sex. Yeah. And so like she gets up and is reading it, and like there's a whole like, it's like, oh, like Master Lewin's here. It's like, Master Lewin birthed my children. Yeah. I don't care. Yeah,
she's like, that's not
it's not important right now. Yeah. And I'm just, it's just very funny. Yes, pardon, my lord, the message is not for you either. It's marked for the eyes of Lady Catelyn, her alone. May I approach? And the message is that Lysa believes that Jon Arryn was murdered. Right. Dun, dun, dun.
By the Lannisters.
Yep, by the Lannisters. Yep. It's like, fuck. And so it's like, well, now you gotta go and like figure out what happened to Jon Arryn. It's like, no, this means that I really shouldn't go. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And so then they go back and forth, and like, which children are gonna go with who?
Yeah. And she's upset that like the kids are going with them and stuff.
Yep. And it's like not all of the children, but like some of them, because like Rickon is staying behind because he's just 3.
Yeah.
But he's taking like all the other kids, and they're gonna go, be with like the Lannister kids and stuff, but also, and you must govern the North in my stead while I run Robert's errands. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. Rob is 14. Soon enough, he will be a man grown. He must learn to rule, and I will not be here for him. So I think...
and then she doesn't want Jon around.
Yeah, she doesn't want Jon around.
Because Ned's not going to be there, so she wants him gone.
Yep. Rickon is very young. He should stay here with you and Robb. The others I would take with me. I could not bear it. You must. Sansa must wed Joffrey. That is clear now. We must give them no grounds to suspect our devotion, and it is past time that Arya learned the ways of a southern court. Southron. It's never Southron, because, I don't know. In a few years, she will be of an age to marry too. Yeah, Sansa will do fine in the south. Arya is not so refined. Yes, reluctantly, she had let go of them in her heart, but not Bran. Never Bran.
Yeah.
Just like, he is a sweet boy, quick to laugh, easy to love. She's just like, she has such, like, and this is like in her head, in her perspective, she just has so much more care for Bran.
Yeah, she absolutely has favorites in general.
And it's like one of
like tears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, it's like oh, Sansa will shine in the south, and Arya needs to learn refinement.
Sansa's her.
Yeah.
Is Catelyn, and so like she'll get to be queen. She'll be like kind of that. Yeah. Arya, she doesn't really even think about. Arya just needs to learn to be a lady.
Yeah.
Doesn't get to be a person.
Yep.
Rickon is too small. Bran is old enough to start having a personality, but also my little baby.
Her sweet little boy.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And yep. While Robb's a little bit too much of a grown man now. Yep. He's 14. Yep. And he's got to learn how to like rule Winterfell and whatnot.
And he's Ned.
Mm-hmm. And he's Ned.
And she can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Jon is...
then Jon is also...
The other woman.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the political difficulty.
Yep. But Bran, he's so uncomplicated. Yes. I can just love this little boy in an uncomplicated way politically.
Exactly.
And it's just like, it's so fucked.
Yeah. She's so much more... Because when I first read it, I just didn't like her. Yeah. And she's so much more interesting in this read-through, I think, as I'm, like, a bit older, like, reading it. Yep. Instead of just mad about, like, this poor, like, kid,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I get that for sure. She would lose all four of them then. Ned and both girls, and her sweet, loving Bran. Yeah. It's like, Ned... Both girls. Doesn't even, like, name them individually. And then her sweet, loving Bran. Yeah. It's just like, come on now, Catelyn, be better than this. Keep him off the walls, then, she said bravely. You know how Bran loves to climb.
All right, George.
Yep. Well, what could possibly happen to Bran? What's the one... It's like, it's so funny, because you go back to the beginning, and you're like, oh, right. Bran starts the story.
Right.
Being able to walk. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I think sometimes about, like, the spoilers for this book, but, like, everyone kind of already knows. If you're watching this, you probably already know about Game of Thrones. I am,
like, basically first reader, but also there'll be spoilers for, this book, pretty much.
Right. Yep. Thank you, my lady. This is hard. I know. What of Jon Snow, my lord?
Yep.
Many men fathered bastards. It came as no surprise to her in the first year of her marriage to learn that Ned had fathered a child on some girl chance met on campaign. Ned off at war in the south, while she remained safe in her father's castle at Riverrun. Her thoughts were more of Robb, the infant at her breast, than of the husband she scarcely knew. He was welcome to whatever solace he might find between battles, and if his seed quickened, she expected he would see to the child's needs. He did more than that. Yeah. Ned brought his bastard home with him and called him son for all the North to see. Yeah. So it's you can just over there. Yep. Just like, I get it. You were off on campaign. If things happen, whatever. Yep. Just like, you don't have to be like, so he's my son about it. Yeah. You know? Yeah, that cut deep. Ned would not speak of the mother, not so much as a word, but a castle had no secrets, and Catelyn knew her maids repeating tales they heard from the lips of her husband's soldiers. They had whispered of Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, deadliest of the 7 knights of Aerys' Kingsguard, and how their young lord had slain him in single combat. And they told how afterward Ned had carried Sir Arthur's sword back to the beautiful young sister who awaited him in a castle called Starfall on the shores of the summer sea. The Lady Ashara Dane, tall and fair, with haunting violet eyes. It had taken her a fortnight to marshal her courage, but finally in bed one night, Catelyn had asked her husband the truth of it, asked him to his face. That was the only time in all her years that Ned had ever frightened her. Never ask me about Jon, he said, cold as ice. He is my blood, and that is all you need to know.
Yeah.
Yep. So the rumors are that it's Ashara Dane, this like younger sister to Arthur Dane, who was like a like well-known, like amazing knight that like Ned had.
But she had like purple eyes or whatever.
Yeah. That is.
Do
correct.
we only see purple eyes with the
Targaryens?
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's sort of like a Valyrian thing.
Got you.
And also, like, the Targaryens have had random children sort of, like, throughout the land. Okay. So it's like, they probably have some sort of Targaryen ancestry, but how, like, recent or whatever, and how, like, official, I don't know. The whispering had stopped, and Ashara Dane's name was never heard in Winterfell again. Whoever Jon's mother had been, Ned must have loved her fiercely, for nothing Catelyn said would persuade him to send the boy away. If there was one thing she could never forgive, she had come to love her... it was the one thing she could never forgive. Yeah. She had come to love her husband with all her heart. She had never found it in her to love Jon. She might have overlooked a dozen bastards for Ned's sake, so long as they were out of sight.
Yeah.
Jon must go, she said. He and Robb are close. I had hoped he cannot stay here. Catelyn said, cutting him off. He is your son, not mine. I will not have him.
Yeah.
Yep. And Ned looks real upset about it.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you know I cannot take him south. There is no place for him at court. He will be shunned. And it's like, yeah, and I'm also shunning him, essentially. Yeah, and then it's like, well, actually, Benjen says that Jon kind of wants to join the Watch.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be a solution. We could send him off to boarding school.
Right.
And, yeah.
Send him off to a permanent, like...
Yep. There's great honor and service on the wall, my lord. That was Master Lewin. And even a bastard may rise high in the Night's Watch. Ned reflected. Summer will end soon enough, and childhood as well. When the time comes, I will tell him myself. Yep. Yeah, because it's like, he's like, I'm going to have to leave, but I'm not going to tell him right away, so we can, just have some time together. And it's like, yeah, maybe the Night's Watch could be good for him, but it's like, is that good for him right now?
Right.
So yeah. And that's where we left off. This section has been all about sort of like getting things set up, getting the pieces all set up, and like now we have like the prologue is like, here's some supernatural thing to worry about. Yep. But then it's like, then here's the sort of normal day to day,
right?
And the intrigue
and
now.
Political, yeah.
We now have like sort of the start of this political intrigue story of like, ooh, someone killed Jon Arryn? Yeah. Another John. 2 Johns.
Yep.
Roberts. Just so many of them.
Yep.
And so it's like, oh, what's going on there? And we gotta go south and figure all this shit out and, getting everything set up. And yeah. Anything else?
Nope.
Alrighty. Yeah, so that's the sort of our first little section
of
Game of Thrones, getting everything in place, and now what we've been reading lately.
So the only thing I have is I just read the memoir of Sherry Frankie, who she grew up in like a family vlog kind of family. Mm-hmm. Ruby Frankie was arrested like I think 2 years ago for like pretty bad Like,
yeah, it's 8 passenger.
Yeah, 8 passengers and stuff. And like was also kind of involved in a cult that got like into it. It's you know, I've been kind of following it for a few like years and stuff. And then like after the arrest and all of that, and so now the daughter has put out a book, and it's a really good book. It's really like well written. Like it's I was basically crying all day, like, listening to it. Right. It's a really heavy book. It's, like, you know, it's pretty sad, but it's, you know.
Very good.
it's a good,
it kind of makes me think of, I mean, I haven't read it, of course, but, like, I'm Glad My Mom's Dead.
Yeah, I also want to read that. I haven't read it yet, but that's,
that one's interesting to me as well.
Yeah.
And, like, hearing, like, some talk about that, because, like, what's his name? Who does the really long iCarly?
Yeah.
Quentin Reviews.
Yep.
Yeah, because he's talked, like, a little bit about, with, like, going into some of the Dan Schneider stuff. Yeah. I have a friend who sort of, like, so there's, like, his partner, like, listens to Quentin Reviews, and it's, like, it's all just, like, recapping the episodes without really anything else. It's, like, it's just, like, and I'm like,
it's, like, the part...
That is a big part of it, but there's more to it than that.
I feel like it depends on the part that you end up at.
Yeah, because, like, he really does, like, get into a lot of, like, other, like, interesting stuff. But yeah, so yeah, that's what you've been reading, and I've just been, I listened to Cradle, but we're going to talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah, we'll have a whole thing on that.
A whole thing on that. So, yeah, this has been Let's Talk About Book, and now you can go forth and think about book on your own time. Have a lovely whatever time it is.
Have a lovely day.
Bye-bye.